Whoa. If you thought the first stories were tough to hear, you were only scratching the surface. What you're about to hear now are cases that don't just involve tragedy, but betrayal, dark motives, and a stunning number of times, the person who made the fatal choice was a player himself. We're talking about stars who crossed a line so absolute that their names are now tied forever to one horrific act. And for one college program, a triple homicide shook the very foundation of the team and the university. Listen close, because the violence you hear about now is often the violence of proximity, of rage, and of a life spinning completely out of control. Ray Caruth was a former NFL wide receiver whose name is synonymous with one of the most callous acts in the league's history. Born on May 31st, 1974 in Sacramento, California, Caruth became a star at the University of Colorado and was drafted 27th overall by the Carolina Panthers in 1997. His rookie season showed promise, but his career stalled in year 2 due to injury. By 1999, his personal life was a wreck, driven by financial problems and a volatile relationship with his pregnant girlfriend, Sherika Adams. On the night of November 16, 1999, Adams was driving her car in Charlotte, North Carolina, with Caruth driving a separate vehicle nearby. He intentionally stopped his SUV in front of her car, allowing another vehicle carrying 2 of his associates to pull alongside. One of the men, Van Brett Watkins, opened fire into Adams's BMW. She was struck 4 times. Caruth then fled the scene, abandoning her. Adams, despite her severe injuries, managed to call 911 and implicate Caruth, naming him as the man who blocked her car. She died on December 14th, but doctors were able to save her son, Chancellor Lee Adams, who was born premature via emergency C-section and survived, though he suffers from cerebral palsy due to the trauma of the shooting. Caruth fled and became a national fugitive, only to be found hiding in the trunk of a car outside a Tennessee motel. The motive, prosecutors argued, was cold-blooded. Caruth did not want to pay child support and had taken out a contract on Adams's life. In January 2001, Caruth was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle and using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. He was acquitted of first-degree murder, but the conspiracy charge was enough to secure a lengthy sentence. He was sentenced to 18 to 24 years in prison. After serving nearly 19 years, Ray Caruth was released from prison in October 2018. His son, Chancellor, now an adult, is raised by Adams's mother, who has stated she forgives Caruth, though the former player has never been part of his son's life. The story of Ray Caruth is a dark reminder of an athlete's fall from grace, a betrayal that cost one woman her life and left a child with a lifelong struggle. 2. The names Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., and Deshaun Perry, though they never made it to the NFL, will forever be etched into the memory of college football. On November 13, 2022, the University of Virginia was plunged into tragedy when 3 of its football players were murdered in a mass shooting. Chandler, Davis Jr., and Perry were returning to the Charlottesville campus on a charter bus with other students after a class field trip to see a play in Washington, D.C. As the bus unloaded near a parking garage, a former UVA football player, Christopher Darnell Jones Jr., opened fire. Jones, a student who had walked onto the team in 2018 but was no longer with the program, killed the 3 players and wounded 2 other students, including another football player, Mike Hollins. The university went into an immediate 12-hour lockdown as authorities launched a massive manhunt. Jones was eventually captured the next morning. No immediate, clear motive was given, though reports indicated Jones targeted the specific victims. The loss of Chandler, a talented wide receiver, Davis Jr., another receiver known for his speed, and Perry, a promising linebacker, devastated the team and the school. The NFL honored the slain players in the 2023 draft, naming them honorary picks. In the aftermath, the university reached a $9 million settlement with the victims' families, the maximum allowed under state law for the 3 who died, and a substantial sum for the 2 who were wounded. In November 2024, Jones pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated malicious wounding, and using a firearm in the commission of a felony. The guilty plea ensured he will face a sentence of multiple life terms, though Virginia no longer has the death penalty. The tragedy remains a raw wound, a senseless act of violence that robbed 3 young men of their futures and underscored the vulnerability of even the most promising athletes to random violence. 3. Odin Lloyd was a semi-professional football player whose dream of making it to the NFL was tragically cut short, not by a rival, but by a superstar player he considered a friend. Born in 1985 in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Lloyd played for the Boston Bandits, a New England Football League team, and worked as a landscaper. He was dating the sister of the fiance of former New England Patriots tight end Aaron Hernandez. Hernandez, a massive star on one of the league's top teams, had signed a huge contract and represented the pinnacle of professional success. But beneath the surface, Hernandez harbored a darkness. In the early morning hours of June 17, 2013, Lloyd was riding in Hernandez's car in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Lloyd sent a series of ominous texts to his sister, asking, "Did you see who I am with?" And then, NFL, followed by, "Just so you know." Later that day, Lloyd's body was found in an industrial park near Hernandez's home, shot multiple times. The investigation quickly led to Hernandez. Prosecutors allege that Hernandez, along with 2 associates, drove Lloyd to the industrial park and executed him, possibly because Lloyd had knowledge of Hernandez's involvement in a separate, unsolved double homicide from 2012. Hernandez was arrested, cutting his NFL career short in a spectacular fashion. In April 2015, Aaron Hernandez was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Odin Lloyd and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His 2 accomplices, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz, later pleaded guilty to accessory charges. The verdict made Hernandez one of the only active NFL players ever convicted of murder. Tragically, in 2017, while still in prison, Hernandez was found dead in his cell from suicide just days after being acquitted of the 2012 double murder. A later examination of his brain revealed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a condition common in football players that can lead to aggression and poor impulse control. Odin Lloyd's murder and the subsequent fate of Aaron Hernandez remains a disturbing and complex case, a story that intertwines fame, violence, and the dark consequences of the sport. For Eric Naposki, a former NFL linebacker, committed murder not in a flash of road rage or domestic dispute, but as part of a cold, calculated plan to profit from a life insurance payout. Naposki, born in 1966, was an outside linebacker who played briefly for the New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts in the mid-1980s. While his NFL career was short, his connection to a brutal 1994 homicide in California would define the rest of his life. In December 1994, Naposki was romantically involved with Nanette Packard Johnston, who was the girlfriend of millionaire William Bill McLaughlin, a wealthy 55-year-old entrepreneur. Packard Johnston and McLaughlin lived together in a bayfront home in Newport Beach, California. On the night of December 15, 1994, McLaughlin was found shot to death in his kitchen. The crime went unsolved for years, a lingering cold case in the wealthy community. Investigators eventually concluded that Packard Johnston and Naposki conspired to murder McLaughlin so she could collect on his $1 million life insurance policy and inherit his wealth. Packard Johnston, who was 25 years younger than McLaughlin, was reportedly struggling with debt and saw the murder as her financial solution. The case finally broke open in 2009 when both Naposki and Packard Johnston were arrested and charged with the murder. The trial, which didn't begin until 2011, laid bare the conspiracy. Prosecutors presented evidence of their affair and their financial motives. In 2011, a jury convicted Eric Naposki of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His former girlfriend and co-conspirator, Nanette Packard Johnston, was also convicted of first-degree murder in 2012 and received the same sentence. Eric Naposki's story is one of the most shocking in football history, not because he was a star, but because he used his size and ruthlessness to commit a premeditated murder for money, a crime detached from the heat of the moment and motivated purely by greed. Jovan Belcher, an NFL linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, was part of a horrific murder-suicide that sent shockwaves through the league and brought the issue of domestic violence and player mental health to the forefront. Born in 1987 in West Babylon, New York, Belcher was an undrafted free agent from the University of Maine who earned a starting role and was known for his determination. By 2012, he was a respected member of the Chiefs' defense. But on the morning of December 1st, 2012, Belcher's life and that of his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, ended in tragedy. Following an argument that escalated early that morning, Belcher shot Perkins multiple times at their home, while their 3-month-old daughter, Zoe, was in the house. Perkins died instantly. Belcher then drove to the Chiefs' practice facility at Arrowhead Stadium. He confronted the team's general manager and head coach in the parking lot, thanking them for everything they had done before shooting himself in the head. He was 25 years old. The murder-suicide was a devastating shock, especially since it unfolded in front of Chiefs management. The tragedy quickly became a flashpoint for discussing violence and the pressures facing players. The investigation was complex, attempting to understand the sudden, violent act. An autopsy of Belcher's brain, years later, showed he suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma. While CTE does not excuse his actions, his family and many observers believe the disease, which is associated with impulse control issues and mood swings, played a significant role in his violent breakdown. Jovan Belcher's story is a profound and lasting tragedy, leaving behind a baby girl, a team in mourning, and a painful reminder of the hidden turmoil many athletes face away from the cameras. 6. Philip Adams, a former NFL cornerback, carried out one of the most shocking and inexplicable mass murders in recent sports history before taking his own life. Adams, born in 1988, played college football at South Carolina State and was drafted in the 7th round by the San Francisco 49ers in 2010. Over 6 NFL seasons, he bounced around the league, playing for the Patriots, Seahawks, Raiders, Jets, and Falcons. His career was marked by numerous injuries, including several concussions. After leaving the league, his life began to unravel. On April 7th, 2021, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, Adams, then 32, went to the home of Dr. Robert Leslie, a prominent local physician, and his wife, Barbara. Adams fatally shot Dr. Leslie, 70, Barbara Leslie, 69, and their 2 grandchildren, Ada, 9, and Noah, 5, who were visiting. He also killed 2 HVAC technicians working outside the home, James Lewis and Robert Shook, before driving back to his family home and committing suicide with a single gunshot to the head. The sheer brutality and randomness of the crime stunned the nation. Investigators could find no clear connection between Adams and the Leslie family, other than the fact that Dr. Leslie had occasionally treated Adams. The motive was a mystery. Following his death, Adams' family agreed to have his brain studied. The results were chilling. Adams was found to have had an unusually severe case of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, for a man his age, similar to the advanced stage found in the brains of convicted murderer Aaron Hernandez and other players who exhibited extreme, uncharacteristic violence. While not a legal defense, the finding offered a grim explanation for the sudden, inexplicable break with reality and subsequent violence. Philip Adams' tragedy is a horrifying case study in the dark intersection of football, brain disease, and catastrophic violence. 7. Dennis Byrd, a defensive lineman known for his grit and determination, was an integral part of the Boston Patriots and the Buffalo Bills in the late 1960s. He later became the center of a murder investigation when his wife was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Byrd, born in 1946, played 5 seasons in the AFL and NFL. His post-football life, however, was marked by tragedy. In July 1975, Bird's 27-year-old wife, Christine, was found dead in their garage in a Boston suburb. The initial reports indicated she was killed by carbon monoxide poisoning, an apparent suicide. However, during the funeral, family members noticed bruises and marks on Christine's body, prompting them to demand a deeper investigation. Authorities reopened the case, and forensic evidence revealed a fractured skull, and that she was unconscious before the carbon monoxide poisoning. The new evidence pointed directly to homicide. Dennis Byrd was charged with first-degree murder. The case went to trial in 1977. The prosecution argued that Byrd was physically abusive and had killed his wife, attempting to stage the scene as a suicide. The defense, however, aggressively challenged the forensic evidence, arguing that the death was, in fact, an accident or suicide, and that the prosecution's theory was flawed. After a sensational trial that drew national media attention, Dennis Byrd was acquitted of the murder charge. Despite the legal acquittal, the shadow of the case never truly left him. The story of Dennis and Christine Byrd remains a haunting, unresolved tragedy in NFL history, a stark example of how the private lives of former athletes can be abruptly consumed by violence and suspicion. 8. Jeff Sagarin was a standout college football player at Syracuse who had a brief career in the NFL and later became entangled in a violent, drug-fueled murder case. Sagarin, born in 1953, played defensive tackle for the Orangemen before being drafted by the Buffalo Bills in 1975. Though his NFL career was short-lived, his His life trajectory took a dark turn after football. By 1985, he was involved in drug trafficking. In February of that year, Sagarin and his friend Stephen Martin were involved in a dispute with a drug dealer, Eric Miller, over money and a cocaine shipment. The dispute escalated into a violent confrontation in an apartment in Queens, New York. Sagarin and Martin killed Miller, strangling him and stabbing him multiple times before dismembering his body and attempting to dispose of it. The crime was shocking in its brutality and premeditation. Sagarin and Martin were eventually apprehended. At trial, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of the planning and execution of the murder. In 1986, Jeff Sagarin was convicted of second-degree murder, kidnapping, and other related charges. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Sagarin's case serves as a disturbing footnote in football history, illustrating a complete and total descent from the disciplined, high-profile world of college and professional sports into a life of crime and extreme violence. His name is a reminder that the demons and dangers of the world exist far beyond the reach of the goalposts. 9. Ken Stills, an NFL defensive back who played for the Green Bay Packers and Minnesota Vikings in the late 1980s, was later found murdered in a seemingly random act of violence in the middle of a major city. Stills, born in 1965, was a product of the University of Wisconsin and a dependable safety during his short time in the NFL. After his playing career, he remained connected to the game, but his life came to a devastating end on November 1st, 1999. Stills, then 34, was shot to death on a street in downtown Los Angeles. The initial investigation painted a picture of a robbery gone wrong, a senseless act of violence against a former professional athlete. Stills was approached by a gunman and fatally shot in the chest. He died at the scene. The murder sent a brief ripple through the NFL community, another reminder of the fragility of life outside the protected world of the league. However, the investigation later took a more complex turn. Authorities eventually arrested a man named Tony Johnson and charged him with the murder. Prosecutors presented evidence suggesting the incident was not entirely random and may have involved a dispute over money. Johnson was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Ken Stills' death, occurring on a dark city street, was a stark and tragic end for a man who had navigated the tough world of professional football only to be cut down far from the field. The name Brian Pata is a painful case for the University of Miami, representing an unfulfilled promise and a tragic cold case that spanned over a decade. Born in 1984 in Miami, Pata was a star defensive lineman for the Hurricanes. He was projected to be an early-round pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, standing 6'4" and nearly 280 lbs, a force both on the field and as a leader in the locker room. But on November 7, 2006, just after leaving football practice, Pata was ambushed and fatally shot in the head in the parking lot of his Kendall, Florida apartment complex. He was only 22. The murder sent a profound shockwave through the storied Miami program. For years, the case went cold, haunted by rumors and a lack of clear evidence. The unsolved murder became a specter over the university, a constant reminder of the young man who was stolen from them. Then, 15 years later, in August 2021, a massive break in the case occurred. Police arrested former Miami teammate Rashawn Jones and charged him with first-degree murder. Prosecutors allege that Jones, who had been suspended from the team years earlier, harbored a deep-seated resentment toward Pata. Evidence cited in the arrest included past threats, phone records placing Jones near the scene, and witness testimony. Jones was released on a substantial bond in March 2022 and has maintained his innocence. The legal proceedings are ongoing, and the case of Brian Pata has become a story of a long-delayed search for justice, a narrative that may finally bring closure, but will never restore the life and career that was so violently stolen. 11. The last story for now, but certainly not the least, involves a star who, like so many on this list, found his life ending in a terrifying moment of gunfire. Kellen Winslow Sr., born in 1957, was one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history, a Hall of Famer who played his entire career with the San Diego Chargers. But this story is about his brother, Scott Winslow, a college football player whose life ended long before he could reach his brother's level of fame. Scott Winslow, a talented running back, was a student and player at the University of Missouri. In 1980, he was shot and killed at a gas station in Columbia, Missouri. The details of the shooting were sketchy and fueled local speculation for years. Initial reports suggested a confrontation or a robbery attempt, a quick, violent end for a young man with a bright future. The case was actively investigated, but the trail went cold, and the murder of Scott Winslow became one of those devastating unsolved mysteries that haunted his family and the Missouri football program. Years passed without an arrest. The tragedy was a deep and personal wound for Kellen Winslow, who carried the burden of his brother's loss throughout his stellar NFL career. Eventually, authorities arrested a suspect in the case, but the evidence proved difficult to secure. The Scott Winslow murder remains an officially open case, a stark reminder that sometimes, even with fame and focus, life can be stolen in a moment, and justice can remain agonizingly out of reach. If I missed any player in the video, please name them in the comments. If you enjoyed this, I'll be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe.